Aneela is co-founder and marketing design lead at HabitAware. HabitAware is a Minneapolis-based mental health tech startup and 2018 TIME Magazine Best Invention. HabitAware's flagship product, Keen, is a smart bracelet designed to help people overcome body-focused repetitive behaviors, or BFRB. Having grown up with a hair pulling disorder, also, I can't say that word. Aneela, you're going to have to say it. Also known as, what is it?
Trichotillomania.
That's Aneela is now an outspoken mental health advocate, raising awareness of these very common yet unknown conditions. Aneela is a native New Yorker and first-generation Indian American. She proudly calls Minneapolis home. Welcome, Aneela.
Thank you so much for having me. This is super exciting. And Reed, after hearing more about you and starting beta, I am even more excited to be on the board now and kind of helping guide and be part of the mission that you started. So thank you for that. I appreciate that so much. I'm ready to go. You tell me when you're on that first slide. As my friend Lisa recently encouraged, Aneela, you were born for this. Well, what was I born for? Well, before I was born for anything, my family came from the Sindhi community, the merchant class that fled present-day Pakistan for India during the 1947 partition. Before I was born for anything, I was born a first-generation South Asian American in Long Island, New York. As a kid, I played office instead of house or school, pretending I owned hotels and restaurants and cruise ships all over the world. Before I was born for anything, my dad died of cancer. Up until that very last breath, I watched him run his own import-export business, fax machine hooked up right next to his IV. And before I was born for anything, I watched my mom run her own dental practice as a dentist and owner until she retired last year. Next slide, please. What was I born for? To be an entrepreneur, of course. Today, I'm co-founder of HabitAware, a mental health tech company built to solve my 25-year struggle with compulsive hair pulling. And I'm not alone. 1 in 20 are not doing what they were born to do because of this mental health condition that is robbing them of their time, their joy, and their energy. But before I got here, I really didn't know that I was born for this. Next slide, please. 10 years ago, when my husband Samir and I temporarily moved to Minneapolis for his career, I decided to start a company. After a brief freelance advertising gig, I set to work, spending 3 solid months toiling away and diligently binging every How I Met Your Mother episode on Netflix. I wasn't born for this. I was failing this. So I went back to work in Adland, and there I met another friend, Marty, who introduced me to tech.mn. And from there, I found tech meetups hosted at the most awe-inspiring, historic co-working space, now known as Fuel Collective, and met even more new friends. Before I got here, I didn't know I was lost on Long Island. I didn't know that this was the home I should have been born in, a birthplace where people care more about community than the brand on my short-sleeve tee. Next slide, please. And I jumped head first into this community, falling in friendship for so many of you, in awe of your abilities and your confidence to do the dance, to freelance, and to simply take the chance. Next slide, please. And so I took my chance, pitching an idea I had 7 years prior and reshaping it for the iPhone age, an app-based travel guide and scrapbook for kids, so they could kid around town, using the phone to look up instead of down. It won that competition, and surely that was the sign that I was well on my way to starting a company, to do what I was born to do. My technical partner and I worked nights and weekends building version, testing, rebuilding. But ultimately, I had put too much weight on my shoulders and had so much fear of failure and not enough design expertise. Boulder after boulder, it was really paralyzing me from building. Next slide, please. my lack of ability to sell also held me back. Or maybe it was my learned inability to ask for help as a quiet Indian girl. I didn't believe I had the skills to convince businesses to pay us to get traffic. I didn't think I could do it. And the more no's I kept getting, the more it just confirmed that I couldn't do it. And I started getting in my own head. It was defeating, I was defeated, and I was failing myself, my business partner, my husband, my dad, who was supposed to be watching over me. And I pulled and pulled and pulled and pulled from the stress of it all. I thought I had found what I was born to do, but it just wasn't happening. Instead, I was just spiraling. Next slide, please. And that's when an aha moment happened. I was pulling and pulling because of the kid around stress, and my husband one day caught me without eyebrows. As we're sitting on the couch a few weeks later and I'm pulling, he gently grabbed my hand. And that was the idea, the impetus for our smart bracelet that tells me when I'm pulling so I can stop. Next slide, please. But I was still trying to do both, to work on one by day and one by night, and in between try to care for myself. I was wearing myself down with 2 startups and a baby. Each of these babies born from my heart, needing the love and attention I was too weak to give, depriving one to feed the other. I was not just a failure, but a fool to think I was born to do this. But I had to detach my ego. I had to let kid around go. Next slide, please. I slowly re-emerged with HabitAware, kid around building my design skills and my confidence, as well as really starting to connect and make friends in the Twin Cities startup community, as I shared my hair pulling disorder, and they confessed their skin picking and their nail biting. Some of them went on to invest, some of them went on to test with us, to connect, to advise, not just for HabitAware, but for me. Next slide, please. My failure was in assuming I was born to start a company, when in reality, I was born to take the pain of my father's illness and to take it out through hair pulling and to find my way home to Minneapolis to give birth to this solution. Thank you.
Wow. I'm just so moved by the vulnerability this afternoon. Aneela, thank you for sharing that story. One of the first things that, I think of is you said so much. There was so much in that 7 minutes. And if you could, now where you are now, and you could go back to one of those Aneelas, whether it's, Netflix binging Aneela, whether it's like paralyzed by fear Aneela, I mean, what would you say to her now?
It's really hard. It's hard to go back because everything that happens for a reason and is meant to get you to where you are. I could go back to the Aneela that almost jumped off a 47-story building, So you kind of have to just push through. That's really it. You have to just remember that no matter what pain you're going through, it's there to guide you. It's there for a reason. It's there not to run from, but to face and to try to figure out what really the message is from it.
It's profound, and I completely agree with that. So I love that answer. Did you overcome the fear of asking for help? And if so, how?
You know what? I think I'm getting there. Because, yes, late one night last week, I asked for help from a fellow founder in the Twin Cities, and they gave me the guidance that I needed, even though they probably don't know this. But yeah, I think I'm getting to the point where now I can acknowledge my anxiety as anxiety, my intrusive thoughts as not real, and acknowledge the moments where I need help and I need to reach out and I need to go beyond the inner circle that I have and sometimes reach out beyond to get objective advice.
Yeah, that's great. Another question, how many no's did it take when selling your kid around town product to convince yourself that you should move on?
So it really wasn't the no's that convinced us. What happened was I was working on Kid Around, and then HabitAware just kind of happened. I was working on Kid Around and pulling, and that's when Samir, after 3 years of marriage and even more of dating, I had learned from age 12 to age almost, to age almost 30 something, how to hide it. So nobody knew. And it was only after pulling, and also around that time my son was born and there's a hormonal component, so I was pulling a lot more uncontrollably. So it was very clear that this was happening. And he said, "Where are your eyebrows?" And then we went on this path of trying to build HabitAware. And then it was trying to push this rock of kid around and then this rock of HabitAware while trying to figure out parenting, which is like 10 rocks in one. If you have a child, you know that. And then we got into Hacks, which is a hardware accelerator program based in Shenzhen, China in 2016. And it was like, that was the moment where it was the time difference and trying to work all day in China on HabitAware and then come home at night and do the family thing and then again stay up because that's America hours and try to work on Kid Around and do, meetings with people at Target and my development partner, my co-founder of Kid Around. It was breaking me. And so that was really the impetus that I could not take on all of this stuff. And I didn't know then how to ask for help or how to say, oh, if we added another partner, we could do it all. So that's really what the breaking point was.
Yeah. We've got one more question until we move on. And again, if you have other questions for Aneela, we will have time at the end. So this is from someone saying, fantastic work, Aneela. Do you currently have any partnerships with health systems in Minnesota, specifically in the mental health space?
If that person is part of a health system in the mental health space, please reach out because we would love to do something like that. Right now we're direct to consumer, but we have a big vision for what we're trying to make and build at HabitAware, and we're working on some really interesting stuff. So yeah, we would love those connections. I will ask for that help since that's what I need to learn to do, to talk to those types of organizations and the people that lead those.
Okay, awesome. Thank you so much, Aneela. Big round of applause. Thank you. Okay, this is what is just so powerful about this event series, is this level of vulnerability, and the broad lesson is people who are starting things, no matter what, if you're an entrepreneur or not, we often see this glossy social media version of success, but behind it is this total human fucked up experience. And so these are the things we need to hear to keep going, to keep following our dreams. So amazing.